Hi, I'm Dr. Heather Moore, owner of Total Performance Physical Therapy. Tonight we're going over hip flexor stretches. So we are going to do just a couple. The hip flexor, just in case you're not sure exactly where that is, it's in the front, right here. They're really small muscles, but they tend to get really tight, especially if you're sitting for long periods of time, like many of us are doing, or you've increased your activity, running, things like that. So they're just the really tiny muscles that sit up here in front of the hip. Basically, if you there's bones on the front of your hip that jut out a little bit, and if you kind of put your fingers on those, they're right about here. Right below that is where your hip flexors start. So this area can get really, really painful. It can make you, it can cause a lot of difficulty with standing up straight. So you really want to make sure that you stretch these out. And especially if you find yourself sitting in a position where you're like this, which is sitting, you're shortening them. So when you go to stand up, it might be a little bit uncomfortable. If these get tight, it can cause or flare up back pain. So it's something you really want to pay attention to, because not having these stretched out it can also be a major cause in back pain. So you want to be careful. This is, even though the muscles are small up front, they're an important one. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways you can stretch that. As with any stretch, first of all, if you get severe pain, non-disentangling, you want to consult your healthcare professional. You don't want to just push through it. That's not okay. 2, you also don't want to contort your body to feel the stretch. So I'm going to show you 3 variations of the same stretch, basically. Do the one that you feel the best with. Some of them you might try and you're like, I don't feel anything. That's okay. Don't contort your body. Don't turn your body. Don't do different things to make you feel a stretch. That's when you start to get in trouble. And so many people do this when they're trying to feel a stretch, is they'll overstretch or they'll turn one way or the other, and they'll really actually wind up hurting themselves. And you don't want to do that ever. So do the stretch as it is instructed. If you don't feel a stretch, that's okay. The difficulty with the hip flexor muscles is there's a lot of other muscles, bigger muscles, and you may feel a stretch, for example, in your quads, which are the muscles up front, before you feel a stretch in your hip flexor. That's okay. Don't push through that just to feel a hip flexor stretch. If you're stretching your quad, you're going to get a little bit of that hip flexor stretch also. So if you feel a stretch in your quad with doing whatever stretch I'm showing you, that's where you stop. Don't just push through that, causing yourself pain just so you can feel a little bit of stretch in the hip flexor. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to do a kneeling position. Now some of you who have knee problems may not be able to do this, and that's okay. You can put pads underneath your knees to make it a little easier. So one leg's going to go up. This hip flexor that's going to be stretched is this one. So the leg that's up, that's when that is not being stretched. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your hips are turned forward, and you're going to lean forward, okay, as far as you can. You can start to feel the stretch right in here. You may not. Again, that's okay. You can keep leaning forward. Again, you want to make sure that your pelvis is rotated forward. As you lean forward, sometimes you have a tendency to turn this way. You're not going to feel a stretch if your hips are pointing this way. So you want to make sure your hips are pointing straight ahead and that you lean as far forward as you can. Again, you may or may not feel a stretch. If you don't feel a stretch, you can also try leaning backwards a little bit. That may also allow you to feel a better stretch in the front of your head. That's about as far as you want to go with that stretch. If you don't feel anything, then you don't feel anything. The next one I'm going to show you is a simple stretch while you're sitting down at your desk, and you want to just drop it down, okay? This, again, if you have stretched out hip flexors, you're probably not going to feel this. If your hip flexors are tight, you are. This is going to allow you to sit up straight, but it's also going to allow a little bit of stretch in the front of that quad and in that hip flexor. This might be one where you feel it a little bit more in the quad than you do in the hip flexor, and that's okay, because if you're pulling here, you're going to get a little tug there too. So that's another way that you can stretch out that hip flexor. And when you're sitting at your desk, you can just alternate, and you want to just wiggle this leg back as far as you can, and you'll get a stretch. You can get a stretch right up front. The next way that you can get a hip you lay down. Now you want to have the ability to have your leg come off the table. So don't lay flat on your bed. You need to scoot over to the edge. You're going to pull one leg up. This is the leg that's going to be stretched out. This leg is just going to be there. And then you're going to lay back. And you're going to let your leg fall. Again, if you have tighter muscles other places besides your hip flexor, you're going to feel a stretch in those first. But sometimes you're going to let this go. You can bend your knee and let this fall as far as it can, and you'll get a nice stretch in through here. If you're doing all of these things and you don't feel a stretch, your hip flexor is stretched out enough. There's different things that we can do that can show you how to stretch other areas, but chances are it's not a hip flexor issue. The last one I'm going to show you is more of a quad stretch, but again, if you have a really tight hip flexor, it can help you. You're going to just pull your leg up and bring it back. Again, you might feel this more in your quad, but if you get to pull it back, if your quad's nice and stretched out and you're pulling it back a little bit more, you can get some of that stretch up front. There are partner stretches that you can do, but we're not going to show you those tonight. These are just the ones that you can do by yourself in order to loosen up that hip flexor. Again, if you feel a stretch on the quad somewhere else, that's okay. Don't push through it. Don't cause pain just to try and get that stretch. If you are experiencing pain and want a free consultation with a doctor of physical therapy, all you have to do is call our office at 215-997-9898, and we'll be sure to get you in. Thanks, and have a